So Lee, you've been a member of the bar for 58 years, close to 60 years.
Close to 60, right?
Always in Hudson County.
Always.
Tell us where you were raised.
In Union City.
And you're still in Union City.
Still in Union City.
Now, you went to school where?
Well, I went to Washington Square College at New York University. I graduated from there. And then I went to Rutgers Law School for about a year, and then transferred to New York Law School and got my degree from New York Law School.
And when was that?
Wow, 1954.
Now, you were also in the military.
Yes, I was in the Army for 2 years.
And what was your rank?
A private, from the beginning to the end.
But you sort of had an interesting career. You weren't fighting on the lines. Tell us what you were doing.
Well, what happened actually was that I received my notice that I had was going to be sworn in as an attorney and also drafted and going into the Army. So I went into the service. I was at Fort Dix, and I received a 24-hour pass to go to Trenton to be sworn in as an attorney. After I finished my basic training at Fort Dix, I became a member of an Army band as a musician.
So you're multi-talented.
Well, I was a musician prior. I went through college and law school working as a musician.
Now you've had quite a varied practice of law over the years, haven't you?
Yes, interesting, very interesting.
So what was your first experience after you got out of law school? Tell us what you did first.
Well, when I come out of law school, at that time we had to clerk. Today you don't have to clerk before you take the bar exam.
Tell us what that was.
Well, you go with an attorney or a law firm, and you work for at least a year, and you're able to take the bar exam then. So that's what I did. I worked for almost 11 months and took the bar exam. I clerked for a gentleman by the name of Daniel Rosen. He was the brother of Judge James Rosen, who was a Hudson County judge for many years, and then became a federal judge.
And was Mr. Rosen a significant mentor for you?
Yes, very much so. Very, very good. When I came back from the service, I went back to Mr. Rosen and started my practice in his office. I didn't work for him, but he gave me office space. And he told me that he already had some work for me to do because there was an attorney across the hall by the name of Leo Brower. And he had told Mr. Brower that I was coming into the office. Mr. Brower was on vacation at the time, but already there were some motions for me to take care of for Mr. Brower. And it's very funny because, you know, today, because of my age, my hearing, I have hearing aid, but at that time, I wasn't hearing too well either because I went into court the first time on a motion, and when the judge threw a question at me, I didn't know the answer. So I asked him to repeat. Judge, I can't hear you, you know, until I figured out how to answer the question. Very interesting.
That was your little device, huh?
Yeah, sure.
So what was the first part of your practice, civil, criminal?
Well, it did both criminal and civil, but I ended up doing mostly civil work.
Over the years?
Over the years. I did plaintiff's work, and then I became associated with Mr. Brower, Leo Brower, and we did civil defense work. We did products liability defense and other defense work for carriers.
Now you also have been heavily involved in political litigation.
Very, 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 very much.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's funny, when I came out of the service, William Musto was the mayor of Union City, and he was a state senator. Well, he was an assemblyman at the time, and then when they changed the legislature, he became a state senator. And he wanted to meet me, and I never wanted to meet him.
Why not?
I just didn't want to be bothered with politics. I wanted to just practice law and raise a family, and I didn't want to get involved politically. And I just didn't like the way politics was working. I had a bad taste for Hudson County politics.
Well, it had a bit of a national or international reputation.
Yes, and I had the bad taste. But I had a cousin who was a Union City police officer, and he was a tenant in a home that my parents owned. So I was there one night, and he heard me. He came upstairs and he said, you know, he said, the captain, his captain, is very upset because the mayor wants to meet with you and you're not meeting with the mayor. Do me a favor, please meet with the guy. I said, okay, I'll call. No, we'll do it tonight. So from my mother's telephone, he called the captain at home and they set up a meeting for me to meet the mayor the next day at 5 o'clock. It was very interesting. And I think I was a little arrogant at the time. But I went into City Hall at 5 o'clock and Mayor Musto gets up and he comes over to me and he said, I understand you want to meet me. Well, that turned me off. So I said to him, I said, look, Mayor, since you think that I wanted to meet you, that means you didn't want to meet me. And really, I didn't want to meet you. So let's say hello and goodbye. Turned around and started walking out. Come up, come back. So we sat down and talked for 2 hours. That was my first experience.
And you evidently, as a result of that experience, you liked what you were able to do?
Well, what happened was he wanted me to join the regular Democratic club in town, and I refused to join the regular Democratic club. And it sort of, it didn't turn out right. We started battling each other politically. I remember I was being invited to speak at different affairs in town, like the nurses had an association, I would speak at their luncheon. And one time I was invited to speak at the commencement exercises for the adult graduating class at Emerson High School. And when I got there that night, I was supposed to be the principal speaker. The Mayor Musto's father was president of the Board of Education. And before I know it, there's a big delay. I find out later the reason for the delay is because Patrick Musto, his father, called him up and told him to come there, so he became the principal speaker instead of myself. And we started battling from that time on.
And I guess we should note for the record that eventually Senator Musto ended up indicted and went to jail.
Well, let me tell you what happened. I'll tell you something that's very, very interesting. In 1968, the Union City Police and Firemen formed a joint committee called the Pay Raise Committee, and they asked me to represent them and handle the Pay Raise Committee. I prepared a petition for them, and we went on the ballot in an initiative referendum. It was a big campaign, really big. In fact, I'm very, very proud of that because what happened as a result of that, I was able to stop the mail from being delivered in Union City. What happened was this. Approximately 3 or 4 days before the election, I'm told that there was a postcard in the post office in Union City to be delivered the day before the election to vote no on the public referendum. And it said, paid for by Ratepayers Taxpayers Association, but they did not have the name of the treasurer. So I checked the statute, and they needed the name of the treasurer. So that weekend is funny. You know, we didn't have computers at that time. We used typewriters and carbon paper. On Sunday, I knock out a complaint, and I call up Judge Artisace, who was the assignment judge in Hudson County. I call him at home, and I told him I have a complaint. I want to come down to your home, and I want you to sign an order to show cause. So I went down to see him, and he looked at my papers, and he said, Libero, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's a federal matter. So I go back to the office, and I redo the papers, because Judge O'Gelly, who was a federal judge, he lived in Jersey City. So I called him up, and I went down to see him. And he said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It's a state matter. Well, we happen to have a headquarters, and it's like a little bit after midnight. And one of the police officers who was there, a friend of mine, said, Libero, pick up the phone. Senator Clifford Case is on the phone. So I speak to Senator Case, and he asked me what the problem was, and I spelled it right out. Stay at this phone number, I'll get back to you. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, now this is Monday morning, right? 2 o'clock in the morning, he calls me back, and he said, look, you will be in federal court tomorrow before Judge, I forget the name of the judge, he will hear the case, and the postmaster in Union City has been directed not to send out any mail until after the decision. Well, we felt great. So we go to court, and it turns out that The judge says, look, I'm sorry I can't help you. It really is a state matter. I have no jurisdiction. And this was like 11 o'clock in the morning. So he said that I'm going to call the post office and I'm going to release the mail. I said, okay. And on the way back, I'm sitting in the back seat of the car, and I said to myself, boy, we gotta do something. So I decided to write a flyer. And I started writing a flyer, and I entitled it, The Last Hurrah. And in the flyer I explained, going to court, and that these people are gonna get postcards. Don't bother with the postcards. I get back, I go down to the printer, like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they didn't have computers, he had a linotype machine. And I said, Ito, I need this flyer by 5 o'clock. And we worked on it, knocked out a flyer. He said, Libero, the ink is wet. I said, we'll hand out wet flyers. And I had 40 or 50 police and firemen go from South Union City, North Union City, handing out the flyers. P.S. we won the election.
Now, tell us a little bit about your family.
I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is the older of the two. She's a chemist. She's a product specialist with a big company. And my son Neil is an attorney practicing in Hudson County, together with his wife, Kathleen Garvey. She's also an attorney. And I have two beautiful granddaughters.
And you were married for how long to your wife?
Well, my wife passed away, unfortunately. It's going to be 3 years, but we were married 55 years.
Terrific. Now,
incidentally, my wife was very helpful to me in trying cases. You know, I used to review the cases with her, and she would help me, like she was a juror, telling me what I should do. Very helpful.
You learned to listen to her, did you?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, tell us about how practice of law has changed from 1955 when you were admitted to today.
Well, in two aspects. It changed in a social way, and it changed with the practice itself. What I mean by the social way is that there was quite a bit of camaraderie among the attorneys when I first started practicing. I mean, we helped each other, and it seems that today the practice of law is no longer a profession, it seems to be a business. You know, you have firms with many lawyers, all looking to, you know, they make big campaign contributions and they get these big contracts with the county or with the cities. And it's a completely different way. The practice itself changed because of the best practices. I like it today. It keeps you more on the ball the way it is today with the discovery and et cetera. So that's how I think it changed.
And do you think that the jury system has changed at all?
Well, I tell you, it changed. I enjoyed the jury system when I first started practicing, because I remember, especially in Bergen County, I'd sit at the counsel table and a juror would sit in a chair. The juror, you could, like we're sitting next to each other, you'd question that juror individually. And then they did away with that because of expediency, they did away with it. But I really enjoyed questioning the jurors.
That was the old voir dire system.
Oh yes, I enjoyed that very much.
Were there any cases that you thought were particularly interesting or significant other than the one you told us about where you were trying to get into court?
I'll tell you about a case. I became associated with Leo Brower in practice. And I handled Bergen County, he handled Hudson County. And the case came into the office of Bergen County, very interesting. A young man, about 28 years old, was driving, went out with his date that night, 23-year-old young woman, and they went to a discotheque in New York State. And on the way back, he was coming south on Route 17. And Route 17 coming out of New York State is a little hilly, a little mountainous. And he claims that as he was making a turn on a bend going in the southbound lane, there was a car coming in the northbound lane in the southbound lane, coming north in the southbound lane. And to avoid a head-on collision, he claims he swerved to the right and he went off the cliff. And his vehicle ended upside down on one track of a pair of railroad tracks. And both he and his date were still conscious. She said to him, I'm stuck, I can't get out of the car. And he said, I'll help you. I'll get you out. So he went to the back of the car, opened the trunk to get the lug wrench, and at this time, a train started coming down the track. So he jumps out of the way, the train hits the car, rips a leg and an arm off the young lady. She lives for 2 days and succumbs. And then there's this lawsuit that comes to me. And Breslin, I think it was E. Carter Carson was the attorney. I go out for a deposition of the defendant. After the deposition, I get back to the office and I said to Mr. Brower, Mr. Brower, I want to try this case. And he said, what are you, crazy? He said, she's a passenger. I want to try the case. I believe there was a phantom driver. I believe our insured. He said, look, you just can't try the case. You've got to get permission from the manager. So I went out to Hackensack and spoke to the manager. I told him I wanted to try the case. In the meantime, now we get a demand. We had a $25,000 policy. We get a demand for $23,000. Right? And the manager said,
What year was this? About?
wow, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, yeah, maybe 40 years ago. Right? And the demand is $23,000, and the manager said, you know, if we get hit, we're gonna pay a lot of money. I said, it's only money. I said,
You were a brash young man, huh?
I said, what about this young guy? I said, he said, well, how would you try it? I said, I'll try it like a criminal case. He did not cause her death. He did not kill that girl. So he gave me permission to try the case. I tried the case for 4 days before Judge Toth. The jury gets the case, and Judge Toth calls both attorneys in, and he said, you know, you really should settle the case. I said, Judge, he wants too much money. He wants $23,000. I'll take 17. You got a deal. So we settled the case. Interesting though, we were able to speak to the jurors at that time, and they told me the first vote they took was 6-6. It was a 12-person jury. And the second vote was 8-4 for a no cause.
Oh, wow.
But then he said to me, he said, it's good you settled because the people felt that the family should get some money. And that was a good case.
You got another one for us?
Yeah. I had one where I tried a case, again in Bergen County, of course. I was before Judge Botter. Again, maybe 35, 40 years ago. And I have a beard now, but I had a beard at that time. And incidentally, when I had my beard at that, initially, no lawyers, nobody had beards, all right? In fact, I remember, just as an aside, when I started the September term, Judge Artisers came down and he pulled my beard. He said, I just want to make sure it's real. But anyway, before Judge Botter, and Arthur Blake is the defense attorney. And I said to Leo Brower, I said, yeah, I've got this case with Arthur Blake. And he said to me, he said, you know, he said, Lee, Arthur Blake has a short fuse. He could blow. Just don't let him get you upset. Well, before we try the case, I get the clients. One driver against another driver, head-on collision, right? My driver, I'm prepping him for trial, and he tells me that he's driving the car and he makes this turn. I said, wait a minute. I want the jury to see you driving the car. When you tell the jury you're driving the car, I want you out there driving that car. And when you saw this vehicle coming head-on, and you turn to your right, I want you to turn that steering wheel to the right. Well, when he testifies, he made such a turn to the right, he fell out of the witness box. During the course of the trial, I was young, a new attorney, and I kept getting up, objecting to questions. Finally, Arthur Blake blew. And he gets up and in front of the jury, he objects to the judge about my jumping up like a jack-in-a-box, he called me. So I got up very calmly and I said, gee, Judge, I apologize to learned counsel for upsetting him. And I sat down, got $10,000 verdict on that one.
Tell us about how you think the Hudson County of old influenced the practice of law, particularly in your early years. The political patronage, the way things were.
Well, you know, it's a little, was tough. It's difficult for me to answer that question because I was against the organization. I politically fought the organization in Hudson County. And because I really fought the organization in Hudson County, I was not a favorite among some of the judges, okay? Unfortunately, there was the influence of the organization with the judges. And I'd like to leave it at that, okay?
You don't find that today, do you?
No, I tell you what though, I got along with most, I remember one time, I went into chambers and I said to one judge, I said, look, I said, please Judge, I'm not looking for a friend in court, but I don't want my adversary to have a friend in court. I'll take my shot on my ability. And I over the years, I began to think that because of being involved politically so much against the organization, and because of that hurting me, it made me a better lawyer. It really made me turn out to be a pretty good lawyer, I think. I had to be.
You sound like you've really enjoyed your many years of practice.
Oh, very much so. I enjoyed trial. Let me tell you an interesting incident that happened. In 1970, I handled the campaign that defeated Bill Musto, right? And then in 1971, I put together a county-wide ticket against the organization, calling it Save Hudson County. And we did quite well. We got over 40,000 votes. We ran against the Democrats and the Republicans. We didn't win the election, but it was pretty close. But after that election, I got a call from people in East Newark. Now, I didn't even know where East Newark was. And I went out to meet these people, and they asked me if I would handle the campaign for them. They wanted to knock out the organization in East Newark, and I said, fine. So they asked me what my fee would be. I said, look, you guys can't afford it. I hope you have enough money to pay for literature and stuff. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. Should we be successful, I would like to be considered to be the borough attorney. We were successful, so I became the borough attorney. Now, after a while, we came up a few years later with the Vista View building in Union City, and I objected to the Vista View. That's another story I'll go into with the initiative of a referendum. But because of the Vista View building, the mayor in East Newark didn't want to rehire me as the attorney, right? And I lost that job. But I said to myself, we got to do something about this. One of the councilmen, who was a friend of mine, decided he wanted to run in the primary election against that mayor. So I said he asked me to run the campaign for him. I asked him, I said, do you have any Republican friends in East Newark? He said, yes. The Republican Party, there is none in East Newark. I said, have some of your Republican friends write you in as the Republican candidate for mayor. In case we lose the Democratic primary, we got you in as we run. That's what happened. He lost the primary by 8 votes. We ran in November, and we elected him as the Republican. Incidentally, after that, the legislature changed the
Can't do that anymore.
Can't do that anymore.
I'll
tell you another case, a personal case. After the Vista View, Musto was indicted, as you said, and he had to step down as the senator. Now this was sometime in May, I think. I forget what year, but it was in May, and there was a special election for the Senate in June. So I decided, maybe I'll run for senator. So I go out, we get petitions signed, and I submit them to the Secretary of State. She rejects my petition. And she rejects my petition because the statute said either Republican or Democrat, no provision for an independent. Well, I brought a lawsuit. It was Judge Bilder who heard it. He ruled in my favor. His opinion was approved for publication, and his opinion went into the books. And I understand that since that time, my case was cited in many briefs in different political cases. Let me talk about the Vista View. The vestibule was a building in Union City, owned by a doctor who was involved with the mob, had mob connections. And the vestibule, they went broke, so Musto wanted to purchase the vestibule building for $3.2 million. I opposed the purchase of it, and I met with him. This was in 1979. I met with him and I asked him if he would put it on the ballot in the November election as a non-binding referendum. I said, you could do that, Bill. Have the commissioners adopt a resolution, put it on the ballot. Which I knew he would not do what I asked him to do, and I didn't want it on the ballot, see? So I asked him to put it on because I knew he wouldn't put it on. Because I wasn't prepared for a ballot fight at that time. And he said to me, no, he's not gonna put it on the ballot. I said, well, if you don't put it on the ballot, I'll put it on the ballot. He said, you'll never get the signatures. Well, I went out and got the signatures, but I got the wrong signatures. I got signatures of registered voters, and I needed signatures of property owners. And the property owners cumulatively, their assessed valuation had to equal 15% of the total valuation of the property in the city. So we went back and we got the property owners, we came up with 20%. We went on a ballot and we won the election. I never forget that, it was in 1980. And what was interesting was, the day before that election, I received a phone call from an assistant U.S. attorney. I didn't know him, but he said, I want to wish you luck in tomorrow's election. Thank you. We win the election, and the day after the election, I get a phone call from the same assistant U.S. attorney. Congratulations, we got him. And it's amazing, really amazing, because that's when he got convicted.
Wow.
It's really an amazing story.
Am I right, you're 84 years old?
84.
Or young, I should say.
Yes, hope so.
And you're still practicing?
Still practicing, yes.
Well, it's really been a pleasure having you talk about your experiences as a lawyer, and it's very apparent you are a professional and enjoy being one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bob. Thank you.